Jesu, if I could trouble you for some more tea, Emin called. It isn't any trouble if I don't get you any, he replied. But I'm in need of more tea. No, I'm navigating. Don't bother me when I'm navigating. Emin glanced at the silver facade of the bridge's forward housings and noticed his young navigator's reflection. Jesu was at his post, monitoring the data streams pouring in from the ship's mind. The pale blue light gave just enough relief from the darkness that Emin noticed his youngest crewman was also smiling. All was well, and that was a good sign considering recent events. You're navigating, Emin prodded. Yes, he replied. I'm a navigator. It's what I do. Well then, what's ahead? Any dangerous clouds? A nebula we should avoid? Radiation spikes, or perhaps a foreign trade fleet? What course of action should I take? Nothing ahead right now. You know, the Garum is a tricky place. Very dangerous. I was not aware. Absolutely. We could run into something undetectable. Something undetectable could run into us. We could plow into a singularity, get blasted by a burst, or even get boarded by pirates. It's dangerous out here. But you don't have anything. Nothing. The recommendation is to stay true first. Straight and true. For now. For how long? A while. Be exact. Jesu mumbled to himself for a moment before giving an answer. 7 hours? Well, I think the longest it takes to brew tea is 4 minutes. You can be away from the console for that long. Is there a reason why I'm the brewer here? Jesu moved up to Emin, taking a position just next to the fore. He fell against a buttress and scratched his chin as if he were an old educator from the sanctum. I know my cooking is amazing, but still. You recommended a course through Vowel space a few frames back. We were put behind by half a frame. Adventure, Jesu countered. We could have taken the quicker route, but I felt, let's try something new. You know, adventure. Adventure. Half a frame behind meant half the time for leisure and refit in the Glass City. I like the Glass City, Jesu, more than merit. All right, adventure was a mistake. I won't do it again. And as a reminder, more tea, please. Emin sipped his tea as he stared through the observation panes into endless nothing. Nothing meant safe. Nothing was good. The tea was fine. Jesu always brewed the same island petal mixture. He received cases of leaves from an acquaintance every other frame. While Emin preferred bitter flavors, the Shio tea was satisfactory. Not surprising, not amazing. Simply, wonderfully satisfactory. Enough to keep him going. Not enough to stress him more than necessary. Such was the state of everything on his ship, the Sainqevsu. Day-to-day life was satisfactory. His crews worked at their respective sections, preparing for assignments, developing salvage techniques, or enjoying interface programs for a little escape. Nothing was constant except the star seas. The void space was simple, elegant, and Emin's home. Simple, satisfactory home. The Sainqevsu itself was anything but a simple ship. Various mechanisms, networked ship minds, and hull-growth stimulators each worked in an array of systems that few in the society would ever understand. Not because it was particularly difficult. It was complex. It was an easy ship, however. Those systems were designed to work without any intervention by a crew member. The ship literally had a mind of its own, produced by one of the more advanced developers in the Garum. The Sainqevsu consisted of 6 smaller crafts, docked near a massive, gold-stained sphere. That sphere maintained a gravity well, which acted as the primary energy source as well as the method for transit through space. Each of the nodes operated in tandem with the others to form a network that fed data into the primary's bridge. This was located in the prime craft, otherwise known as the first. Each node was attached to the well by magnetic locks and simple pylons. Close proximity to the well allowed the crew to operate without the long-term ill effects of reduced gravity. A network of thin corridors buttressed against the well allowed for quick access from node to node. A vast web of organic, synthetic, and potential computing systems determined each course through interstellar space. The Sainqevsu was never off. Its ship mind operated on a celestial map which was provided to the Tse by a trade partner centuries ago. The map predicted the movements of stars, comets, and even the galactic climate so that travelers might make the transit to and from Gardhimtse without any difficulty. It had never been wrong, and knew how to transit the star seas without trouble. Speed was less important than time. The Tse learned that the hard way. The first ship to breach what the earliest scientists called Uve's first equivalent to a fraction of the perceived speed of light, struck a pebble and was promptly vaporized. Time was the way. Pathfinding was as important. Transit was much safer if a ship operated in a different arc than the rest of local space along the safer routes. Emin knew how to find the routes well. He had been working in space for the better part of 30 years. Despite his youth, just past 100 years old, he was well aware of the dangers of navigating in the Garm. The Sainqevsu had seen its fair share of troubles, such as new navigators and their apparent thirst for adventure. However, he knew he had the best teams to see the ship through to the other side of trouble. Primary, Jonrung, the ship's second cartographer, said from her console, "We have an odd change to a swell to true third. If the gravity well acted as a globe, the nodes would be arranged along the poles and the hemispheres, with the fifth at the northern pole and the sixth at the southern. True third referenced the location directly above, relatively speaking, the third node. In simpler terms, there was something happening to the right of Emin's position. Distance and time. These things were common. Marking points of interest for future transits was the never-ending part of the job. Jonrung was good at cataloging every little thing she detected. She went at her work like an addict. "What do you think?" Jonrung asked, testing the newest member of the first. And Chaesu answered. 8 terms at 4 years past, 5th section, 18th sector, somewhere in the middle. 8 light years away. 4 years since first catalog, 5th section of charted interstellar space, or the Gardhimtse. 18th sector of roughly 5,000, somewhere in the middle. "Good enough," she called with a nod. "What's the nature of the swell?" "Reading as radiation from a small stellar event," Jonrung replied. "It's behaving differently than its original chart. The mind has conflicting measurements on it. It reads as one small event, but the data comes in as multiple smaller bursts. They seem to be shifting towards the 6th section. Potentials. Cast off from an erupting star, though there is only a slight chance of that." "Listed as an anomaly," Emin ordered. "The authority can send a team to investigate later." "Understood and done," she replied. "I suppose that would be our excitement for the day," the latest political officer, a scar-faced shio named Vosha Uliatsotozi, asked from the rear of the bridge. "We'll make a course adjustment in 5 hours to avoid a gas spur," Chaesu said. "It'll likely make you feel dizzy. That could be interesting." "I'm all on toes and excited," he hummed. "Really? No. I've been through corrections." "Glad to hear it. I would hate to have you clean up your own vomit from my floor." "You won't have to worry about that. I get to delegate. I'm sure you wouldn't mind having Chaesu do all the cleaning." The bridge became silent again. Emin continued to sip on his tea, while the others continued to monitor the mind in transit. Vosha sat in the back, out of sight and out of mind. Emin hated men like him. They were all the same kind of monster born from the political cesspit in the capital. Officers like Vosha were more or less spies against the crew. If the crewman did anything out of line, then the officer would report them to the authority. The result was usually a loss of a year's worth of merit, and that could mean a less desirable outcome when it came time to leverage currency for better placements. The worst ones would create issues to report in order to earn a little extra merit for themselves, and they never lasted long on his ship. Vosha was a necessary evil, though. Officers meant they were still in the structure. Some of the crew looked at them as signs of normal operation, and that alone made him a little more tolerable. And so Emin looked back to space to take in the pitch black again, to lose himself in the emptiness of his home. No worries, he thought. No officers, just the dark. Nothing to fear in the dark. The correction took place without incident. They avoided the spur, taking a wider course to true second to the left of the 4, in order to avoid its radiation. Chaesu did this with ease. He set a direct course true first, for half an hour before setting the ship back towards their primary destination. During the maneuver, the crew received data concerning the current assignment. A navigation beacon had been disconnected from the authorities' network. These beacons were scattered around the Garm and the star seas. Most ships were not equipped with the same navigational charts as the Sainqevsu. They needed most of their energy to power life support systems and their engines. This meant that any vessel that entered the next sector would be blind unless they could retrieve fresh data from the beacon. There were opportunities in the deep. His secondary, a Yutze named Mike K, was far overdue for her own ship. She was the brightest of the Sainqevsu and had served with him for 20 years. That was a long time for a secondary of any age. At 75 years old, Maike was a young star that had not yet been discovered. Emin worried that her opportunities were slipping past her because of her dedication, and so he thought ahead, set her a destination that would best aid her future. Her ship was already prepped at a port just outside the UN trade zone. A little more capital would allow her to legally claim it, and then she could be off to earn her own life. "Primary," Maike's voice called from the dark wall when he expected it. It was time for their usual talk. Emin rose from the lattice weaves of his cot and tapped his fingers against each other to summon plastic strands from the floor to ceiling. They quickly tangled into each other to form a communication screen to the secondary's chambers. Maike sat near a small sphere, still dressed in her black uniform, and she was thinking. "Yes. Any changes on your side of things?"
3 anomalies, all in different sectors of the same section.
"The 5th.
Yes, strange."
"They usually are. We've seen strange readings before."
"Usually turns out to be nothing." Bunley has an interesting theory, though.
What would that be?
He believes the anomalies are similar to past readings given off by the Mutchem.
The massives, he thought. Of course, they would want to appear right when he did not need them to. Huh. That would be interesting.
John Nung sees his point. I've seen the readings, but to be honest, I haven't read that kind of data in a very long time.
Neither have I. That's why we have John Nung and Bunley.
But what if it is them? The authority. Well, they should know that they're close.
We'll submit the data. For now, we stay on course.
Emin, I know that you want what's best for our people here. If the massives are in the Garm again, the authority will want to begin dialogue.
Yes? What part do you think we would play in that process?
She leaned closer to her screen, resting her arms on her knees. Sainqevsu has some of the best communications processes in the structure. If we led the translation, that would be an interesting assignment.
Of course. You also think it'd be fun, right?
I'm not so sure I'd want to go to them. And she drifted into imagination. But we would be in direct contact with them. There's a lot to learn there. Exciting?
A little.
Imagine what they would say.
Let's assume we go back. We find the massives and engage with them. We send their communications straight to the authority. And we are there as their intermediary.
Yes, that sounds right.
How long do you think it takes for them to say hello?
And she nodded. What's the record for translation?
For hello? I believe the quickest translation was 100 years ago. It took a full frame and a half to translate the greeting. That ship was there for 20 years translating communiques. And in the end, they provided a chart to a galaxy we'll never visit. She nodded as she ran her fingers through her short, coppery hair.
It's not them, but interesting to think about.
It's true.
Maybe we could speak directly to them.
That's not a good idea. The language in the state is too complex for us. Listening to unfiltered signal will send you straight to crazy. Hallucinations, voices, all in the head. All the best things.
Right. Translation is best.
It's best.
So, 20 more years. Seems too long.
For you it is. You need a new ship.
Oh, I'm sure there are many I could take. There's no rush for now.
Once we're back into the structure, I could press someone in the authority.
And Maike put her fingers to her heart in clear thanks. It isn't necessary, but I do appreciate the gesture. 20 years might be too long. 19? Well, that seems about right.
Of course. I can work with you for 19 more years. At 20, I'm out of ideas.
Me too.
Emin paused for a moment to consider if he should broach the subject of her new ship. 19 more years would be agreeable. She wasn't the type to joke needlessly. She usually had a meaning, 19 years. It was not the right time to tell her. How was our progress towards Gardhimtse?
We'll be out of transit within the hour.